Thank you, Rue. Thank you. We are actually going to move into the last little part of our panel. I'm going to welcome Honors College Dean Adams here to say a few words, and then we will welcome President Castor.
Last questioner. You're obviously all awesome people. And, fascinating, interesting, informative, inspiring, wonderful panel. We really appreciate it. And thanks also to Dr. Basu and Lauren and all the Laurens for putting on, and the whole team at ONS and in the Honors College for putting on a really, really wonderful event this afternoon. I've been transformed through the experience, listening to these wonderful stories, and it's been a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all too for coming. USF has a great record with regard to the Fulbright program, but you, the students and faculty who have come for information and inspiration, you are the future of USF's record with the Fulbright program, and so we look to you to continue our record with the help of the ONS staff. It's been very inspiring for me to listen to these stories today, because 30 years ago this fall I began my year as a Fulbright professor in Germany. I was Fulbright professor of American Studies at the University of Bonn in what was then West Germany. That's a long time ago, but it was one of the most, if not the most important year of my professional and personal life. The experiences of that year have stayed with me to this very day. Just this past month I finished a translation of a German novel with a German colleague who is a good friend and whom I met 30 years ago in Germany. So that's a lifelong relationship with my German friend and with my Fulbright experience. So it has that kind of effect on each and every one of you. I was amused though with the story about when you mentioned the hierarchical nature of German academics. And we were walking into the office of the English department at Bonn the first day, and I walked in and the secretary behind the desk stood up and said, "Herr Dr. Professor Adams." And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down. We have to have a different relationship than that. But it was a great, great year and a very, very transformative year. It's my pleasure right now to introduce our featured speaker, our capstone of our panel this afternoon, a remarkable woman and one of Florida's preeminent public servants. And a great, great friend, obviously, of the Fulbright program, Betty Castor. Betty Castor has served in a number of capacities throughout the years. She's been a Hillsborough County Commissioner. She's been in the Florida Senate. She's been in the Florida Cabinet. Most relevant to USF, all Bulls. She was president of this institution for 5 years, I believe. 6 years, sorry. 6 years. And for that, we are very, very grateful. Her global vision has a lot to do with the character of this university and the global perspective that this university has, and for that we're very, very grateful. Most relevant to this event today, though, she served for 2 years as the chair of the Fulbright Scholarship Board, the governing authority for the Fulbright program, and so she knows this program from various angles, but has been right to the top of the program. So we're looking forward to her comments today. President Castor.
I was just delighted to hear all of your comments, because my recent experience with the Fulbright is at this level. I was on the Fulbright board for 6 years, for 2 terms, and served as chair, as Chuck mentioned. And during that period, I interacted with a lot of folks at IIE. Heather, thank you for being here. We've exported not only Fulbrighters. I know you're from Houston and from Rice, and that's a great place. And we exported our former provost to the University of Houston, where she was president, Manu Couture. And she started as my faculty assistant, so we are watching her very, very carefully. But thanks for being here. I just want to echo everything you've said. As a member of the Fulbright board, and from this level, what we did, there were 12 members. Most of the time I was on the board, there were not that many. But all of those final applications came to the board where we did the rubber stamp. We did read applications. We divided them, and we were kind of specialists for countries or for parts of the world. I was not a Fulbrighter myself, but I did start my career teaching in East Africa. And I just found your all of your comments about language to be very humorous, because when I applied to the Teachers for East Africa program over 50 years ago and was accepted to go to Uganda, we went to Columbia University for, get this, 8 weeks to learn Swahili. When I landed in Kampala, Uganda, the language was Luganda, not Swahili. But we did that dance, and everyone said, speak English, you know, and it was going from Swahili and Luganda with ease, speaking English, because we taught in English, was a lot easier. And even when we were out and tried to get along in the markets and in our travel and everything else, people would just shake their heads, you know, trying to get this Swahili swang. It never really did work for me, although there are a few phrases that I sometimes use now with younger students. But the emphasis that you placed on the application itself, I think, is very, very important. I read for some countries in sub-Saharan Africa, the applications would come and they were all available to us online, and we would download them and read them and give the final approval. This is after they went through several tiers of readers before us. And I also read for the hemisphere. And I would say to those who are interested in the Fulbright program generally, the countries represented here today are pretty competitive. I found applications in the hemisphere to be, there weren't as many applicants. And I think one thing that's important is for the program, and Lauren knows this, trying to get people to apply for some of those countries where there are not as many. Germany is very competitive. Even Spain is pretty competitive now, but some of those South American countries are not quite as competitive. Some of the sub-Saharan countries are not as competitive, but the programs are not as large, so you have to be careful, and you have to be a little bit flexible, because in our experience, sometimes applicants say, I can't go, or we'll have an opening in Jordan, and you were going to go to Egypt, you're so disappointed, will you go to Jordan? The answer is yes, you should. So I think there is this little bit of the applications don't have to be perfect, and you should be flexible, because sometimes there's some mobility, but the idea of looking at how one can connect with a country is really important, and it's unusual. Of all those applications that I looked at, no two were ever the same. Everybody has some individual, some real interest, some way to hit a home run, and the worst thing you can do is not be accepted. Oh, that's just a shame, because you can go on to other things. The application process itself for Fulbright is an education, and there are other scholarships available, and if you don't get a scholarship, you can move away for a while and go and seek your fortune in one of these countries, so to speak. You can get somewhere abroad, and you can attach yourself to an educational institution, and that's a good part. So Fulbright is good, it's important, it is, in my estimation, the premier scholarship program for students. The ETA program is the one that is growing the most. And from the time I first went on the board until last year, the ETA program had grown by leaps and bounds. The reason for that is very simple. People want English teachers all over the world. And darling, you weren't were you an ETA? No, you were an
No, I
early
was in
childhood
South Africa.
educator. Yeah. So that's the biggest program. It's marvelous to know how successful USF has been with the Fulbright program at the student level and at the faculty level. And yes, I think the institution should brag.